very fast. Probably, well, I say very fast, probably 45, 50.
You're on go.
Smack
We're
that.
on. Oh, yeah, 45, 50, back in a bridge.
All right, I call the meeting to order. This is an open meeting, the Ouachita Parish School Board Finance Committee. In lieu of COVID-19 emergency, the limitations on gatherings and social distancing will be observed in accordance with proclamations 58 JBE 2020 and 59 JBE 2020. The public is encouraged to observe this meeting via teleconference. The public had the opportunity to email comments to the communications department of the Ouachita Parish School Board at least 1 hour prior to the meeting, and will also be able to comment using the chat feature on the online platform. These comments will be addressed in the public discussion portion of each agenda item of the meeting and should include the name and contact information of the person who is making the comment. Further certification is hereby given that in order to obtain a quorum, one or more members of the Finance Committee might participate at the meeting by teleconference in accordance with the aforementioned proclamations. You'll please stand for the pledge and the prayer. Ask Dr. Archer to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Keegan, if you'll lead us in the prayer, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Most gracious Father God, we thank you for allowing us to be at this point in place, this point in time, and continue to wrap your loving arms of protection around us, Father. Shelter us from the storm of life and the storm of overwhelm. We pray, Lord God, that this meeting will be what you would have to be today. I pray that our words that we speak are pleasing to you. I pray our actions, Father God, the things that we do are pleasing to you. Father, just bless us. Be with us as you always have been. Lord God, I ask to pray for these things in Jesus' name. Evermore. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Archer. Thank you, Mr. Keegan. Members, you received a copy of the, well, first of all, I'd like to get approval of the agenda before we move on.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Merritt, second by Mr. Como. Any discussion from the committee? From the audience? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, first of all, thank y'all. I know we're in a different setting than normal. We do have two members joining online, Ms. Wheeler and Ms. Oakes. You can see them on the screens here in the room. So if you did not sign in, please make sure you do that. Katie, Becky, Sherry's going to sign the two of you into the meeting is joining online. So that's all I've got before we move to the approval of the agenda. Dr. Coker, I'd like to give you the opportunity. Anything you want to add?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Geis. I know that most of you probably know that the legislature has gone into special session effective on Monday, I believe. And in the process, they are looking at passing the budget. That's the next major hurdle that they're going to have to get through. Well, prior to COVID-19 and everything that we have been going through, it was looking pretty promising for the school systems throughout the state of the possibility of a 2.75 increase in the MFP. And even if that didn't happen, the possibility of a 1.375 increase. And so we just received this week from the State Department a discussion and kind of where they are standing on the MFP. And as you know, the MFP drives the budget to a large part for our school system. And so it looks like that the raises or the increases are probably not going to be included. It looks like that there's going to be a standstill continuation formula that they're going to be using, which is the same exact thing as what we had this past year. Regina, I know that I sent you a copy of this. Anything that I say that's not accurate, please correct me. In this standstill, and there are 4 different options. In the standstill option, Ouachita Parish School System stands to lose $1,093,898 in MFP funds for the 2020-2021 school year. And that is because of loss of students, as well as the fact that we have passed taxes and done bond issues and things like that.
Thank you, Dr. Coker. In your email this week, you received a copy of the minutes from the February 27, 2020 Finance Committee meeting. There's also a copy of those in your folder. You've got a chance to review those. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve minutes.
Motion by Mr. Merritt. Second by Dr. Autry. Any discussion with the committee? From the audience. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 1 of business, cash investment report. Ms. Bennett.
Morning.
Okay, I am going to be discussing this cash equivalents and investment report. There's not a whole lot I can say about it. It is a picture of the cash on March 31st. We all know what happened on March 13th when we were told that schools would be closing the next week. So pretty much there's not a whole lot of change because March only had 2 weeks left. And if you look at the general fund column, it has a total on that day. It had $40 million in cash, $40,633,000. And the reason that balance is so large is because we had just received ad valorem taxes in January and February. That's property taxes, and they're paid, they're due at the end of December. So everyone had paid locally, had paid their taxes on their home and their property. The next 4 rows are the sales taxes. And you can see compared to the prior year, like over on the right, there's a column that's March 31st, 2020, and then March, comparing with March of 2019. Those taxes are approximately the same. I know the one that everyone's really interested in right now is the 13th check. And you can see that as of March 31st in 2020, it was just a little bit more, about $50,000 in that balance more than the year before. So like if you look at the West Ouachita sales tax, that is, you can see that balance is a little bit lower compared to the year before. That's because projects have been paid for and completed on the west side of the river. And also the debt service payments, those balances are a little bit low only because our debt service payments are due on March the 1st. And a payment had just been remitted on all of those debt service funds. Is there any questions about the cash equivalents and investment schedule? Anything anyone want to know? Okay, I will tell you, everyone probably kind of was at home and watched a lot of news while we were not at work in our offices. And you could see daily that the stock market was ticking down, just going down and down and down. I want to tell you what the rates are because I usually try to include that. The LAMP rate, October, which is usually a good comparison of what all the rates are. On October the 1st of 2019, the rate was 2%. The rates over the years since 2008, when the banking crisis happened, rates had really dropped. And like we were getting 0.1% on some of our investments. And the rates had gradually over the years gone back up, and they were around 2 to 2.25%. On March the 1st, because COVID was kind of in the news and things were happening in the stock market and in the bond markets, the rate March the 1st was 1.63%. After the nationwide shutdown, March 31st, the rate had dropped to 1.17%. Today, the investment rate is 0.7%. It's not even a whole percentage point. So since October, from October to today, the rates have gone down 1.5% on all of the investments that the school board has. Also, one thing I want to talk to y'all a little bit is I know that y'all have heard a lot about sales taxes, and people don't, businesses don't have to pay their sales taxes. And I want to let you know what I have discovered. Okay, the city of Monroe collects the sales taxes for the Ouachita Parish School Board. We have 4 sales taxes. 2 of them are for completely for salaries, and they go in, one in June on an extra check and one in November on an extra check. Businesses collect their sales taxes. Like, for example, the February sales taxes that businesses and stores collect are due at the tax collector by March the 20th, which they collect for a whole month, and then the taxes are due to the sales tax collector by the 20th of the next month. Ouachita Parish School Board receives our check by the 10th of the next month. So February collections are due to the city of Monroe on March the 20th, and then we would have received it by April 10th. Okay. When the governor declared that schools were closed and businesses were to shut down, part of what he did was he allowed businesses not to pay their taxes that were due on March the 20th until May the 20th. But by the time he made that declaration, most of the companies had already paid their February taxes, because they were due March 20th. A lot of companies don't wait till March 20th. I'm sure the larger stores go ahead and pay it, by the 5th of the month. But one thing is that happened. And so that would mean that we would get the February collections would go to the city May 20th, and we would not receive them until June the 10th, which would be next week. So we don't know, there could be a large bucket of taxes coming to us, or there may not be. We may have already received the majority of them from February anyway. Also, another thing is the governor made a declaration that the March taxes and the April taxes, they could wait to pay them in June and July. But the state of Louisiana is what's considered a home rule state. That's HOME-RULE. And that we're only one of 5 states in the country that has that. What that means is if we're a home rule state, then when the governor declares that taxes don't have to be paid or there's a sales tax holiday, the local jurisdictions can say, no, we don't want to do that. We're not going to follow that. So you think about when they declare a sales tax holiday and you go shopping thinking, oh, I'm going to save my 11% in the city of Monroe, you only save 4%, and you're saving the portion that goes to the state of Louisiana. So with the other 2 months that the governor said they don't have to pay, Ouachita Parish said, no, we're not going to do that. So they only allowed one of the months to be paid late. And that those taxes we will receive, next week by June the 10th. So one of the things that happened, though, is like there's only one whole month that businesses were shut down, and that was the month of April. So you think about what happened in April. Well, on April the 12th, they had the tornadoes and the storms, and a lot of homes and businesses were destroyed or had a lot of damage, which always causes, unfortunately, a lot of shopping for products to repair, like lumber and roofing, and that will increase the sales tax that it always does. That increase in sales tax could offset the fact that a large majority of businesses were closed in April, and we may not see a large drop, or I don't know, it may or may not cause the taxes, to be about the same. But one positive thing toward the 13th check is the collections had already been paid for 10 and a half months of what goes toward those checks. So there may not be a large decrease. What goes there could be those checks. So she asked me a question. There may not be a large decrease. What goes? Oh, that's me.
Well, you didn't hear enough?
Yeah, she is asking you a question. Okay.
I thought that was my own voice.
It was.
That was my phone popped up.
Oh, okay. But,
Not sure what happened there, but anyway.
Let me make sure I said everything. I think that's.
Fireman.
Oh, and I did see an article of the city of Monroe. Inside the city said that their budget is going to be, really bad because they had a loss in sales tax income. The city of Monroe, for some reason, theirs did go down 11%. I don't know why.
I think the mall has a lot to do with that because they get a big,
Yeah, that's true. But
they get a major part from the mall traffic.
And this sales tax on the 13th check is Ouachita Parish, including the city of Monroe. So that would include the mall. So it may go down. We really just don't know. But Ouachita parishes did not decrease 11% like the cities did. So that is positive. So are there any questions about the sales tax?
It's great information, Sharon. I
We don't
appreciate
know what
that. I mean, any
check's going to be yet. So.
Any questions for Ms. Bennett? Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item number 2, 2019-2020 budget revision number 1. Ms. Meekus. Might need to come to the mic, Regina, so they can hear you
Oh, so they can hear me
online.
online.
I didn't hold it down because it's fire.
As I said earlier, this budget revision is fairly non-eventful. It's we've examined all of the funds, all of the grant funds, as we've been talking about the budget all year, and I've been reporting to the board where we're pretty much right on target with the budget. This pandemic and unusual situation that we've gone into at the end of the year has caused some concern. So we've gone back and reviewed all of the budgets just to make sure that we're still on track. As Sharon had stated, our sales tax, when it came in the month of April for collections in March, we didn't see the drop that we thought we could have. So going from those projections, going forward, we have a few minor changes to the budget. We were looking at, beginning of the year, we had projected a decrease of 50 students. Well, over the 2 counts, we ended up, what was the exact number? It was about 150, but I, 180.
Ken, do you know the exact number of decrease? I didn't bring that with me.
So somewhere around 150, but in the MFP, it changed our allocation $667,000. But in a budget the size of our general fund, you have other, savings, other revenues that come in. So what we were looking at overall was an expected $258,000 decrease in revenue for the current year over what was originally budgeted. We've gone back and looked at salaries, benefits. As you know, in the current year, we had the state raise for certified and support staff that came in the MFP for 1920. That was a projected amount. We had the change in healthcare premiums that went up 5% in January. That was a projected amount. The normal changes in retirement that go up each year or fluctuate from year to year. So with all of those things considered, our original budget stands pretty solid. So I'm very pleased with that. I did have to make a couple changes, and what you have in your handout is just a summary by function of the general fund. On the second page, we did make adjustments to the beginning fund balance for the actual audited financial statements once they were issued this year. So we want to make sure those things are exact. And then we have the sales tax funds, basically 1968 and 1995 supplemental salaries and benefits. What comes in goes out. So I did project, because I was looking at those revenues, 5%, which is where we're required to adjust by law. 5% of 10 million, it's not a whole lot of wiggle room there. So I did adjust it down 0.5%. And I think that puts us in a pretty safe area for the 1968 and the 1995 sales taxes, which are on the 3rd and 4th page of your handout. The big change that you'll see if you'll turn again to the child nutrition program, this is really where the budget that caused some stress, more so for Jolynn than I think anybody else. But she manages her fund and is very concerned that it stays in a positive operations. So she and I had discussed this budget, discussed the changes. Really, she missed 2 months of revenue. So you're going to see a decrease in her revenue, her state and federal revenue. You'll notice her federal revenue is going down about 26%. So 2 of the 9 months that she serves, her revenue is 0 for her meal reimbursement. So that's going to be the biggest change. But then, on the flip side of that, she wasn't purchasing groceries either. Whenever she did the feeding the last 2 weeks of March, she used groceries that she previously had because of obvious, you couldn't just order a shipment. She was having to improvise and cover those supplies.
Regina, when we were feeding the students while we were out of school, that was a federally funded program. Is that correct? Have we received any money on that, or do we anticipate receiving any money, or how's that going to work?
The feeding that we did the first 2 weeks that we were out of school was not a separate funded program. She got to claim reimbursement on those, same as any other meal that she feeds all year long. So that was not additional funding, but she did get to claim reimbursement on those. So that did help her budget for those last 2 weeks, that she wasn't a full month of March without feeding, or the full last 2 weeks of March without feeding.
So you're saying there's no way we're going to recover any of those first 2 week funds, even though the federal government provided $600+ billion for assistance? Was that just for the PPE or employee protection program?
Right. What we've been told is that she could continue to feed and claim reimbursement in the same method that she normally would on a regular day.
Do you know we received that money yet, or are we going to receive it, or do you know?
We will receive it.
Okay, so we will be compensated
Right. We will be compensated for the meals that we serve.
during the 4 weeks. During the 4 weeks, oh, you separated 2 weeks and 2 weeks. You said the first 2 weeks we didn't receive any money. The second we did.
In the month of March, we were in school for 2 weeks, so everything was normal.
Right.
The last 2 weeks of March, they did allow us to feed and claim reimbursement in the same method that we normally would. Where the loss comes in that period of time is she was feeding a lot less meals than she normally would. Salaries for her, salaries and benefits are the bulk of her expenses, just like ours, because we were able to continue paying everyone. You know, her expenses just continued on. She did not have to purchase groceries in that time like she would if she was feeding 18,000 kids, but she was still having to pay her salaries and keep her equipment up and pay electricity and all that stuff that normally goes through her fund. So
And that will be qualified for consideration of being refunded by the federal government, since
No,
technically, if we hadn't had the program, we wouldn't have been, okay, because those employees would have been paid regardless.
correct. So those, I see Jolene's joined us. Jolene, did you want to speak to this?
we don't get reimbursed anything except for the meals. In other words, we don't qualify for any federal funds or FEMA funds or anything because we had the supplies. We did not purchase anything that was out of the ordinary because of the pandemic. So we don't qualify for anything. All we qualify is for the meals that we served. And as Regina said, where we were serving anywhere from, say, let's just say 15,000 meals a day at lunchtime, we were only serving 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 meals on those 2 weeks we did. So we did towards the last of March. So we got all of the money you see in regards to income for the fiscal year of this year. That is what we have received, and we will not receive anything else.
Jolene, do you want to let us know how we actually began our summer feeding program on Monday, and she has expanded the number of sites that we're feeding students this year, which is more than we've ever done. You want to tell us about that and kind of share with them where you are on that?
Well, as of yesterday, we had 7 sites open, and we only fed yesterday 600 meals, which is very low. I've done a robocall. I'm putting ads in the paper. I'm trying to put it in. I've put it in Ouachita Citizen, and I put it in the Free Press. We did the 98.3 interview yesterday. We've got it on the website. We put signs out yesterday in front of the schools. We're trying to get flyers out. Next thing I hadn't done was contact churches yet to see. We've got 1 or 2 churches that are picking up meals for their families. So that would be great if we had those to help. Some people have transportation, some people don't. But we're going to play it day by day and keep them open. I want to keep as many sites open, but maybe reduce staff even if the numbers don't come in at certain schools. but we're just going to have to evaluate because we can't lose money.
And we have ceased the Meals to You operation effective May 31st. Is that correct?
Correct. That was a good thing, but to me, we had a hard time with delivery, and then they were getting more breakfast and snack foods versus protein foods. In my interpretation, although what we received was really good, I got a lot of compliments on it, but I think we're offering a hot meal every day and a cold breakfast every day for them to take home for the next day, a full, a balanced breakfast. So if we can just get people to pick it up. So
Jolene, how many schools are we looking at?
we have seven school sites this year at summer feeding. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, this feeding program is totally federally funded. Is that correct?
It's totally federally funded. Any child can come in. They can be 18 years or younger. Doesn't matter whether they're free, reduced, or paid. They can be going to Ouachita Parish, Monroe City, Jackson Parish, whoever, we've got kids that live. I know when we did it in March, we had children coming over from Jackson Parish, live, on the close line, go to Woodlawn. And we had some from Lincoln that were right close to our parish area that came to Calhoun. So we can feed any child in Ouachita Parish as long as they're 18 years and younger, or if they're, physically or mentally disabled and are still in school, we can feed them 19 years up to 21 or 22, I think, if they're still enrolled in school.
Can you tell us the sites?
Oh, okay. I don't have the list in front of me, but I think I can remember them all. We have Calhoun Middle. We have Woodlawn Elementary, Linwell Elementary, Riverbend Elementary, Richwood Middle, Jack Hayes Elementary, and I'm forgetting somebody. Jack Hayes. Is that 7? What? Nope, not doing Ouachita Junior. That's 6. I'll remember it in a minute. I can't think. Swartz Lower. Yeah. Swartz Lower.
Swartz Lower.
Mm-hmm.
Swartz Lower.
Yes.
And one of the things that Jolene and I have not had a chance to discuss, but in looking at the budget numbers at the end of each year, after we close out, the policy on our fund balance restrictions states that based on the amount of her surplus, that her surplus be transferred over to her equipment fund. So last year, she ended the year, and I wanted to give you I know about what the number is, but I wanted to give you the exact number. Last year, she ended the year with a little over $1 million in fund balance in the child nutrition program that would typically be transferred over to her equipment reserve. Now, you won't see a change in the sheet you have in front of you because the equipment reserve is considered one of part of her grouping of funds. So it wouldn't make a change on the child nutrition budget overall, but it would make those funds available to her to cover the deficit that she's going to realize this year because of the loss of meals that she's feeding. So if it's agreeable to the committee, I will proceed with preparing her budget in that manner, not to transfer her last year's surplus over to her equipment reserve, to let her use that to cover her deficit this year because it will pretty much wash out. Is that agreeable to you, Jolene? Are you still
Yeah.
listening?
Yes, of course. I've fully expected that. The way that was written was that the equipment reserve was there for equipment, but in the future, like next year, we're no telling what we're gonna do, and I plan to serve meals even if we have to stand there and hand them out at the school like we did in March. I'm not gonna not serve whenever possible, but if we have to, we'll have to pull any money we have left from it for equipment to work next year. You know, I just don't know. So it's very
Right, and the
important
difference-
that we, yeah. So
The
we're
difference
just,
of those numbers is $25,000, so it's basically a wash, and that would offset her loss.
Virginia,
Yeah.
Jolene, that would be for next year's budget, not,
you're right.
In
I'm sorry,
that's in
you're
the
right.
the revised budget.
in the
Okay.
in the revised budget, and it is considered here, but like I said, her equipment reserve is all inclusive in her budget, so you really wouldn't see it on this page. It's just restricting it in a separate fund that she has and
Mhm.
leaving it in her operating fund to offset the deficit.
Okay, any questions? Is there anything else?
I have one more thing I'd like to mention on the very last page. It's not often that we revise the debt service funds just because we know what the expenses are going to be when the year starts. Typically, if we do any revisions, it would be to the revenue. But we did have to revise the debt service funds this year because of the refunding in the West Ouachita district. We did have to revise the budget to account for the sale of the new bonds and the refunding of the old bonds. So that's basically the change that you see there in the debt service, is accounting for the debt service expenditures on the payment of the old bonds and the other sources for the sale of the new bonds.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Meekus regarding the budget revision proposal to the committee?
Regina, based on what Sharon's saying, the 610 sales tax figures that we anticipate coming in, based on that, then at that point in time, we'll know where we're at as far as the sales tax. Will we be using that on our 2021-71 budget, or how's that going to work?
What I'm looking at on sales tax, I know there was a lot of concern initially. Well, we saw April taxes come in, or our April receipts come in from February taxes, what the vendors collected in February, remitted to the collector in March. We received it in April. We didn't see a big change. That was also right on the front edge of the pandemic and the stay-at-home order. So we are not anticipating a big change. I don't see it falling out. You have some stores that weren't collecting. You have some that were collecting triple. So, based on what we've seen so far, we're just being very conservative as far as committing expenditures that come from a sales tax source. But I don't anticipate a large change for us overall.
But once the June 10th figures are in, then we'll be using that going forward for the next year's budget.
Yes, sir. That will give me a much better idea of because when the June figures are in, I'll have a better idea of what's going to come in July and August. With it hitting at this time of the year, there was really no time to see any kind of a trend. We're going on what, initially we're going on what was being reported by the media, just saying, okay, what could happen if everyone follows the delay in the payment time, but we didn't see that. So I'm being, what was it, just the right amount of.
Well, I mean, and if you read The Citizen, you also read that each governmental body is projecting, and they gave you the worst case scenario that's out there. And I think they mentioned Ouachita Parish as losing in excess of $7 million worst case scenario in sales tax revenues that could be coming in. Best case revenue would be losing $2.5 million. And so we're going to be using a very conservative approach based on the numbers that we have that's coming in June to start looking at what the budget's going to be for the 2021 year. And if it comes in, we are anticipating that things are going to be coming back and building back up and growing, and folks will be in our hotels again, and they'll be buying vehicles again and stuff like that. But we're going to take the conservative approach that that's always going to be better if you have more than if you don't have enough.
Right. And I do anticipate that it is going to affect the upcoming year more than the current year. The current year, as far as the 13th check, we had 10 of 12 months collected. As far as the fiscal year in our budget, we had 8 of 12 months collected. So going into next year, it could have the potential to have a larger effect than what you're seeing here in this end of the year revision.
The 2 months that weren't collected for the sales tax, will that be rolled over to the 14th check, or how do you handle that?
Yes, typically the timeline for the sales tax collections and the timeline for our fiscal year do not line up. So we have a collection period, and then whatever's collected after that cutoff date is put in that fund and distributed with the next check. But it all follows the employees who are here at that time and the time that the collections are made.
Right.
All right, anything else for Ms. Meekus? Any questions? Jenny, was that everything you wanted to cover?
I believe so.
We will get a vote on to approve the revisions to the budget in just a second. Ms. Oakes, Ms. Wheeler, I'm going to ask Sherry to email you both a copy of what Sharon and Regina has shared, so you'll have it. I apologize you didn't have that this morning, so you could follow along. But
I do almost forgot to mention one more thing. What you don't have in front of you, and I'll have for the board to review for next week, is the revision of the special revenue funds, basically cost reimbursement funds. All of the budgets have previously been approved. They're all approved by the State Department. We follow exactly as the budget says, but we have to revise that at the end of the year to follow our fiscal year. So basically those aren't changes in the budgets themselves that we will be bringing, but just an adjustment to what we're spending in our current fiscal year.
okay, so we're going to ask the committee to approve the 2019-2020 budget revision number 1 as presented by Ms. Meekus, and also with the understanding that we will not transfer money from the cafeteria fund to the equipment reserve for the 2019-2020 budget to help offset the losses that Ms. Carrero and her department has experienced with the loss of 2 meals or 2 months worth of serving meals. So that is what we're approving today. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Monroe. Second by Mr. Killian. Any discussion from the committee? From the audience? We'll wait on this just a couple seconds to make sure Mr. Monroe doesn't get any comments or questions. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, that is our last item of business. Any comments from the committee? Anything anyone needs to share? Or any other questions that you may have? Okay, yesterday or this week we learned that you can see on your agenda that our next scheduled meeting is July the 28th. That is where hopefully we'll be prepared to present our budget for the next fiscal year. But there is going to be a need to possibly have a special call meeting, and Dr. Coker and I talked about it yesterday, and we have kind of penciled in July 1st. We have some additional changes to insurance that we may need to discuss as a committee. So July 1st, 9 o'clock, if you'll just pencil that in, we'll firm that up, but that's kind of what we're looking at right now for a special call meeting on July 1st. Our next regular meeting is July the 28th, 2020, where we will be considering our operating budget for the next fiscal year. Questions?
I sure like that 9 o'clock start time over the 8 o'clock.
Does anything happen on the Eccles bill that he's trying to do insurance?
I'm not aware.
I'm sorry.
Come on, a question about Representative Eccles' bill
Right.
on insurance.
Is that
Not
rolling
aware of
or not?
I don't know. I hadn't been.
We need to put the word on that to oppose.
I don't know. I know that Regina and I met yesterday on a phone conference with our insurance folks, and they are in the process of getting, they've got our policy out to 39 different companies, and hopefully we're going to get some better rates than what we were looking at, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that right now, not knowing where it's going to go or what we're going to do. But that's, our policy ends June 30th and begins July 1st. And so we need to have, we've asked for an extension for July, and then we will try to bring it to the July board meeting for the full board to vote on our next policy. This is property policy is what we're talking about.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Mr. Keegan has moved to adjourn. Second by Mr. Merritt. All those in favor say aye. Thank you all very much.